Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome. My name's Alison Stewart and I'm your host of this session of Cut the Crop. And today we have Hugh Wigley, a farmer from South Canterbury, who's going to be talking to us about grassweeds. Welcome, Hugh.
Thank you, Alison.
Yeah. Now, before we actually talk about the Growers Leading Change initiative, tell us a little bit about your background and the whole history of, grassweeds within cereal crops in South Canterbury.
So I've been I've been a crop farmer for the last 20 years. We really haven't had any livestock on the farm since mid-2000s. Over the last 20 years, we've practically eliminated phalaris, wild oats and sterile brome with a combination of chemical and roguing. Every year, we'd employ 2 or 3 school and university students over the summer holidays to walk the whole farm, initially with sacks and more lately with knapsack sprayers. One student, when asked about the roguing on her CV, was immediately offered the job when she finished her explanation. In more recent years, we've found it harder to employ students, and also my right-hand man, who was a clean tramper, and spent most of November, December walking the farm, retired. A combination of less roguing pressure from us and the incidental introduction of more resistant ryegrass species to the farm has seen an increase of ryegrass as a weed in our crops. So that's where we found ourselves a couple of years ago.
Yeah. So obviously you put forward a topic to create a Growers Leading Change arable growth group to focus on this. How did you actually get the group started?
Probably wouldn't have been able to start the group 5 years ago because people were not wanting to fess up to having ryegrass issues on their farms. But it became apparent that firms and chemical companies were actually conducting trials on farms through South Canterbury, and so it seemed appropriate when this opportunity to start this group up to actually combine all this research that was going on into one group, and because in the last 2 years it has now become so widespread, and also that knowing that all the companies are aware of what is out there, it was very easy to, everyone I rang about joining the group was certainly positive and wanted to come on board.
So how many growers have you got as part of the group?
Well, there's about 10 growers,
and they're all local? Or how widespread is your group?
Yes, no, it's all South Canterbury. Well, no, south of Timaru. The soils south of Timaru are quite heavy. We're a very similar climate, and I think mostly on our own farms, we've found that there's a certain autumn cropping system that works extremely well. It's low risk and offers very consistent returns. So, we're a group of farmers that do farm in a very similar manner.
So you mentioned sort of that there was a little bit of a stigma in the past associated with having grassweeds. Are you talking about having resistant grassweeds or just grassweeds in general?
Well, it relates back to ryegrass contracts and any grass that's going to come. We all felt that if we admitted that we had grasses that might show up in seed crops that would have difficulty getting contracts. I think that's really where it sprung from. Yeah.
Okay, so what sort of things have you been doing? I mean, you've been running now for a year?
Yes, we're into our second year now. So the first year was more assessing the issue, and to that end, we've had a survey of everyone put forward 2 or 3 paddocks, and Phil Ralston from FAR came and did weed assessments on those paddocks so that at least we knew what the problem was, and also we would then be able to gauge how effective our measures that we're putting in place was being.
Yeah. So the GLC facilitator, I'm just trying to think, who's your facilitator?
Kath. Yes.
So what's Kath's role in this? Is it really just to coordinate the growers choosing, key goals that they want to achieve over the year?
Yes, she's very much just as the coordinator. She then brings in the scientists and researchers as required to meet the objectives that we have.
You've done the original survey, you've worked out sort of what the current situation is, and you're now looking at management practices to help manage the presence, or hopefully reduce the presence of resistant weeds.
Well, at this stage, we've just set up a trial in an autumn-sown wheat crop that had a known issue with ryegrass weeds. We've found with this particular weed, it's mostly concentrated on the headlands or parts of paddocks. I mean, the absolute classic is when a combine's been moved from one paddock to the next, and it's the corner where it goes into the paddock where the particular problem is. But so we've set up a trial, hopefully using all the latest thoughts on chemicals and combinations that may be effective, just to give us a baseline of what we can do chemical-wise anyway.
Yeah. So that's a farm, that's one of the growers' farms?
Yes,
yeah.
That's correct.
And so that's going to be like a demonstration
Well, it will be, and
trial? And
we've already had our first field day when the wheat was at about the 2-leaf stage, and certainly any escapees, as I call them, are just basically at the one-leaf stage. So that was at the end of May we held that field day, and from that field day we've then got another follow-up trial that's just been put up, and adjoining to the one that's there, studying what combinations we can use as post-emergent sprays on those escapees.
And so what are you going to do at the end then of the trial? You're taking a whole load of assessments and you're writing it up as just a trial result, or is it going to go into some sort of grower manual over a 2 to 3 year period? What's the long-term goal?
Well, the long-term goal will be to assess which chemicals are actually effective and under what conditions they are effective, so that we have a management program that for the chemical side of the control that's most effective. And these trials have been run by chemical companies for the last 2 or 3 years, so there was a resource to use as to what chemicals to try in this situation.
Yeah. And so are you going to have open it up to a wider group of growers at any time? Or is this, how are you going to be able to get, I guess, more added value from the work that you're doing with your group? How are you going to get it out to the rest of the growers?
Well, at the field day we had last month, we certainly had the local agents along, plus chemical reps there as well. So that was the initial stage, and there will be at least 2 more field days held, one in the late winter and then again in the spring, when it's we can assess just what has survived the treatments, and they'll be showing up as ryegrass above the wheat crops. Yeah.
So far, have you been reasonably happy with how the group's gone?
No, it's been very good. We've had very good turnouts, a lot of very stimulated discussion. A lot of people have already been trying different combinations, and so everyone's certainly very, not such a subject you want to be enthusiastic about, but... No.
I have that problem being a plant pathologist, that sometimes I can get really excited about seeing diseases and then recognise that's probably not appropriate.
But, they're certainly aware that autumn sowing of crops is critical to how we operate our farms, and at this point in time, the biggest risk to that is ryegrass, or resistant ryegrass coming through. So, we're certainly determined that we need to find some answers.
Well, I guess at this moment in time, resistant ryegrass, is up there. But unfortunately, I can just see that it's going, there's going to be more problems with resistant weeds, just by the nature of what's happening overseas. We're going to have extended problems with herbicide resistance, and getting growers to understand how to manage resistance from day one is going to be a big part of being able to actually live with this problem.
What's really apparent is biosecurity is so critical. The ryegrass is generally felt that it's come in from an external source, so it's not a problem we created on the farm, but it arrived and then it's it's built up. So that's certainly one of the lessons. And chemical control is only a small part actually of the whole, of controlling any weeds. And so the included in the trial was actually incorporation techniques for the pre-plant herbicides that we used. And one of the things we'll be looking at is roguing, because the only way you can actually eliminate a weed is actually the follow-up roguing, because chemical will never get all the weeds. And so I'm quite confident that if we can get the right chemicals and also then put the roguing pressure on those weeds, we can actually get it to a state where it's no longer a problem, as long as we don't keep bringing in a fresh source. So.
Yeah. That's the issue, isn't it? You're absolutely right that everything starts with keeping things out at the border, and because we bring in a lot of imported seed, because we have a vibrant seed industry, there's that. You want to be able to bring seed in because we want to build our seed industry up, but on the other hand, it does pose a biosecurity risk.
I think the message to get out to the industry, in actual fact, that it's going to be very tempting for growers to just grow nui, which we know is a clean source of seed, and avoid that that potential seed coming in from an outside source. So the industry has as big a part to play in this as farmers have, because if they want us to be able to continue to grow crops for them, they need to make sure that they're supplying us with seed that's not contaminated. Yeah. So area we had a big discussion at the evening after the field day was roguing and different techniques, and of course drones is becoming quite an exciting possibility, and particularly, of course, getting the software which will identify there is already software out there, in a work paddock to identify green material, and you can set up your sprayer to control it. Well, it's to the human eye, it's very easy to see a ryegrass seed head waving above a wheat crop heads, and so I think there'll be a lot of effort put in by this group to talk to people with drones and and the science community is how we can get the programs to easily identify it. And you may well see drones flying over our paddocks in the November-December period, identifying where the weeds are, and that will either then be fed into a drone, or there's already the technology for sprayers to individually.
I've seen, when I was in California, they had some amazing drones that could just pick up, and this was in vegetable crops, and it was early in the season, and so it was easier to differentiate. But it's pretty amazing. The drones can just go over, identify the weed, go up there, zap it.
I know that that with roguing we can eliminate any of these weeds, if they pop their head up over the top of the crop, and so therefore I certainly believe that if we can get the right program to do it, well, we can have the same success, doing it using technology rather than the human eye, and might mean that our farming system will be viable into the future, because anyone looking from the outside would wonder, our system is viable. But if we have the right science, and we all talk about science solving various other issues and that we're facing at the moment, well, this is a case where I think science, can do the same thing for us.
So it's highly possible that could be your follow-on GLC group, is looking at, precision ag technology.
Well, it could well be. And, we certainly hope this spring we will have, the companies with drones coming to look at the situation and assessing what it is, and maybe even trying to start mapping it, because I think that's where our group will move on to, because what we're doing at the moment is only a holding pattern, and I mean, you do need to get weed numbers down to a level where it can be controlled, and that's where the chemical will do, but the chemical will never eliminate those weeds, and that's where following up with the roguing will work. So it's always, you've got to remember, you can easily spend $70, $80 a hectare on a weed, a grassweed spray. Well, to me, that's a lot of people walking through a paddock for that sort of figure, and that's always how we've justified it in the past. But the issue, of course, getting people to walk through paddocks is not as easy as it was 10, 20 years ago. So we look at technology to replace that.
It does come back to the whole issue of the fact that there's no silver bullet, and it is a combination of different management practices. It's roguing, it's your cultivation practices, it's your rotations, it's the chemicals available. And I think that in an arable system, with the complexity of the system that we have, we're used to understanding how to dial in and try and integrate different management practices. And I think it's just going to be a skill that a lot of other sectors are going to have to pick up.
I mean, I think certainly our problem is, created by that we did change our cultivation practices to less cultivation, so therefore we weren't getting that level of chitting that we were in the past. Yeah. We reduced the roguing pressure that we were doing, and then when you had a combination of chemicals that were less effective, it just wasn't one thing that created the problem. And then, of course, we then were starting to get these incursions coming in, from off-farm sources. So, like most issues, it's just not one thing that's caused the problem. It's a whole combination, and I can look at our farming system and see that, we changed 3 or 4 things, all might have saved cost or improved the actual wheat crop, but it certainly had a negative effect on long-term viability, because we found we were also encouraging more ryegrass to survive through to harvest, which of course...
Yeah. And it's interesting, because you hear a lot of people talking about, if you only did this on a farm, that, it would be so much more environmentally sustainable or whatever. But in a complex system like an arable farm, there are so many potential unintended consequences of making one change that you think is for the good, and then 5 years down the track it actually raises, you might solve one problem, but you create another.
But I mean, as people will tell you, if you stand still in farming, you're actually going backwards. And I suppose we say we stood still for a period and we went backwards very quickly. So, it's a case of, using the best science and adapting it to one's own situation. But.
Yeah. Okay. So anything, any words of wisdom for any growers out there who might be thinking about maybe coming together and doing something under the Growers Leading Change initiative?
Oh, well, I mean, it's, I think the message is it's IWM, integrated weed management, because it's using all the tools in the basket. And, I think if you use them all, there's actually the potential to get the weed levels down to zero, because really for long-term viability, that's what you've got to do, because you haven't got them down at level, then you only have to have 1 or 2 hiccups and suddenly, they've reared their ugly head again. So, I just can't, emphasise enough that, to use the science in every step of the way and use all the different options that are out there, and not be, lose your focus because you think only one system is the best, is the way forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Hugh. And thank you very much, listeners. Have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.